An elderly woman was denied entry to a luxury hotel. Then her billionaire husband arrived and bought the building. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Eleanor Williams approached the Pinnacle Hotel. At 73, her silver hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a comfortable cardigan over practical slacks. The journey from their country estate had been tiring, but she'd insisted on arriving early to prepare their suite before Robert completed his business meetings. Eleanor paused to admire the limestone facade with its gleaming brass fixture. The Pinnacle stood as a monument to old New York money, a place where celebrities, foreign dignitaries, and business titans routinely spent $5,000 per night without blinking. She smiled, thinking of the surprise weekend Robert had planned for their 45th anniversary. The doorman barely glanced at Eleanor as she approached, his eyes already scanning the street for more promising guests. She retrieved her own luggage from the taxi and wheeled it through the revolving door into a lobby of soaring ceilings, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers. At the front desk, a young woman with immaculate makeup offered a practiced smile that vanished when she assessed Eleanor's appearance. "May I help you?" Her tone suggested she doubted Eleanor could afford even the cheapest room. "Yes, I'm checking in. The reservation should be under Williams," Eleanor said. Her voice warmed despite the receptionist's coldness. The woman tapped her keyboard with manicured nails. "I don't see any reservation under that name. Perhaps try Robert Williams. It's our anniversary weekend." The receptionist's eyebrow arched. "The presidential suite reservation, that Robert Williams?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes, that's correct." A disbelieving laugh escaped the receptionist's lips. "Ma'am, that suite is reserved for Mr. Williams and his wife. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. I am Mrs. Williams," Eleanor said firmly, opening her purse for identification. The receptionist exchanged glances with a manager who had materialized beside her. His bespoke suit and carefully neutral expression couldn't hide the skepticism in his eyes. "Mrs. Williams would have arrived in a private car, not a taxi," he explained as if to a child. "And we've been instructed that the real Mrs. Williams will arrive with Mr. Williams later this evening." Eleanor felt her cheeks flush. "I am Eleanor Williams. My husband is arriving separately. If you'd just call up to confirm." "Ma'am," the manager cut in, "this is a 5-star establishment. We cannot disturb our VIP guests with calls to verify claims from walk-ins." His gaze swept over her modest attire. Eleanor stood straighter. "Well, I understand your caution, but I assure you, security will escort you out if necessary," he whispered, leaning closer. "This isn't the first time someone has tried to access a wealthy client's reservation." As a security guard approached, Eleanor felt dozens of eyes watching from plush lobby seating. The humiliation burned deep, yet she maintained her dignity, clutching her wedding ring, a simple gold band Robert had given her when they had nothing but dreams. "Very well," she said quietly. "I'll wait outside." Eleanor settled on a bench across from the Pinnacle, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. In 45 years of marriage, she'd faced many indignities as the wife of a man who had risen from poverty to extraordinary wealth. But this raw dismissal stung particularly deep. She watched as a parade of guests arrived, women dripping in designer labels, men in tailored suits stepping from luxury vehicles. The doorman, who had ignored her, now jumped to attention for each of them, offering effusive welcomes. Eleanor considered calling Robert immediately, but hesitated. He was closing an important deal, and interrupting him went against her nature. Instead, her mind drifted to their beginning in a cramped Boston apartment, where Robert had worked 18-hour days on his first tech startup, while she taught elementary school to pay their bills. They had eaten ramen noodles and dreamed big dreams on their second-hand sofa. When success came, it arrived like a tidal wave, sudden and overwhelming. Eleanor remembered the first time they'd experienced real wealth. Robert had sold his company for $8 million, and they'd stood in their tiny kitchen, staring at each other in disbelief. That night, they'd splurged on a bottle of champagne and Chinese takeout, making promises about how money wouldn't change them. Mostly, they'd kept those promises. While Robert built his empire, Eleanor had maintained their foundation, running their charitable foundation, raising their children with Midwestern values, and reminding Robert of where they'd come from. She'd deliberately kept her simple style, believing it kept her connected to reality while they moved in increasingly rarefied circles. Now, sitting outside the pinnacle in her sensible shoes, Eleanor wondered if she'd taken this too far. Perhaps Robert was right, that sometimes she needed to look the part to avoid exactly this kind of situation. Her phone vibrated. Robert's text read, "Meeting finished early. Where are you?" Eleanor hesitated before replying, "Outside the pinnacle. Small issue with check-in." His response came instantly. "What happened?" She downplayed it. "They don't believe I'm your wife. Waiting for you before causing a scene." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, "Stay there. 15 minutes." Eleanor knew that tone, even in text. It was Robert's controlled fury, the same one he'd used when their son was bullied in 7th grade, when a business partner had tried to cheat him, when the board of a charity had misappropriated their donation. It was the quiet, dangerous calm before Robert Williams changed something, or someone, forever. She rubbed her wedding ring anxiously. She'd never wanted special treatment, just basic human respect. But the look in that manager's eyes had contained something that had followed her throughout her life. The judgment that she wasn't enough, wasn't worthy, didn't belong. A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the curb. Eleanor stood, smoothing her cardigan. Whatever happened next would be pure Robert, unpredictable, unstoppable, and completely devoted to the woman he'd loved since she was 19 years old. Robert Williams emerged from the Maybach with the focused intensity that had made him a Wall Street legend. At 75, he remained imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, his silver hair perfectly cut, his bespoke Tom Ford suit a subtle display of wealth that needed no announcement. His eyes found Eleanor immediately. "Ellie," he said, the endearment softening his otherwise stern expression. He took her hands, searching her face. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Robert. Really?" She squeezed his hands reassuringly. "They just didn't believe I was your wife. It was embarrassing, but—" "Tell me exactly what happened," he interrupted, his voice quiet but commanding. Eleanor recounted the experience while Robert listened, his jaw tightening progressively. When she finished, he remained silent for several long moments. "Wait here," he finally said, straightening his tie. "Robert, please don't make a scene. Let's just check in and enjoy our weekend." He kissed her forehead. "No scenes, just business." Eleanor watched as Robert crossed the street, his driver James following discreetly behind. The doorman recognized Robert instantly, his posture snapping to attention. Robert didn't acknowledge him, moving purposefully through the revolving door. Inside the lobby, conversations hushed as Robert's presence registered. The manager who had dismissed Eleanor hurried forward, hand extended. "Mr. Williams, we've been expecting you. Your suite is prepared," and Robert ignored the outstretched hand. "Who's in charge here, sir?" "The general manager, the owner, whoever runs this hotel. I want them. Now." The manager's smile faltered. "Mr. Harrington is our general manager, but he's in a meeting. Perhaps I can assist." "Get him," Robert said, his voice deadly quiet. "Tell him Robert Williams needs to speak with him immediately." As the manager scurried away, Robert stood motionless in the center of the lobby, checking his watch periodically. James positioned himself near the door, alert and watchful. Whispers circulated through the space as guests and staff recognized the billionaire, whose companies employed thousands and whose philanthropy had transformed educational opportunities for underprivileged children across America. 7 minutes later, A distinguished man in his 50s emerged from an elevator, moving quickly toward Robert with a practiced smile. "Mr. Williams, Gregory Harrington, it's an honor to have you staying with us. I apologize for any inconvenience. The woman your staff removed from this lobby 30 minutes ago," Robert interrupted, "was Eleanor Williams, my wife of 45 years. The woman for whom I reserved your presidential suite." Harrington's face drained of color. "There must be some mistake." "Yes," Robert agreed coldly, "a significant one. Where is the staff member who dismissed her?" By now, Eleanor had entered the lobby, concerned about what Robert might do. She saw the receptionist and manager standing frozen behind the desk, their expressions stricken. Robert noticed them too and turned to Harrington. "Your staff judged my wife by her appearance and found her unworthy of basic courtesy. Now, I'm going to judge your hotel and determine its worth." He pulled out his phone and dialed, "John, Robert Williams, that Pinnacle Hotel acquisition we discussed as a possibility. Move on it, immediately, whatever it takes." By morning, financial news outlets were buzzing with the story. Williams Enterprises makes aggressive move for luxury hotel group. The business world scrambled to understand why Robert Williams, known for tech and renewable energy investments, had suddenly offered a 30% premium for the Pinnacle's parent company, making the offer nearly impossible for shareholders to refuse. Eleanor watched Robert work the phones from their suite, his intensity undiminished since the previous evening. After his call in the lobby, the hotel's entire demeanor had transformed. Gregory Harrington had personally escorted them to the presidential suite, apologizing profusely while offering complimentary services that Eleanor had politely declined. "You don't need to do this," she said, bringing Robert a cup of coffee as he ended another call. "You're buying an entire hotel chain because someone was rude to me seems excessive." Robert took the coffee, his expression softening as it always did when he looked at her. "This isn't just about yesterday, Ellie. Then what is it about?" He gestured for her to sit beside him on the sofa. Outside their window, Manhattan sparkled in morning sunlight, a city they had conquered together, yet sometimes still felt foreign to them. "Do you remember Carlos Rodriguez? Worked as a janitor at my first office building." Eleanor nodded. "Of course. Lovely man. His daughter just finished medical school on our scholarship program. Yesterday, before my meeting, I saw him being ignored by the reception staff at McKinley Investments, standing there in his work clothes while people walked around him like he was invisible." Robert's eyes darkened with the memory. "And then I come here and find my own wife treated the same way. That's different. Carlos was actually being ignored. I was just mistaken for someone trying to scam a room." "It's not different," Robert insisted. "It's the same disease, judging people's worth by their appearance, their clothes, their apparent wealth." He took her hand, running his thumb over her simple wedding band. "We've spent decades building something from nothing, Ellie. But what's the point of all this success if the world still operates on such shallow principles?" Eleanor understood then. This wasn't just about her humiliation. It was about Robert confronting a truth that had always bothered him, that the world they'd succeeded in remained fundamentally unfair, evaluating human worth through materialistic measures they had both always despised. A knock at the door interrupted them. Harrington stood outside with the manager and receptionist from yesterday, both looking terrified. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams," Harrington began, "these staff members wish to personally apologize for yesterday's incident." The young receptionist stepped forward, eyes downcast. "Mrs. Williams, I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse for my behavior." Eleanor studied the young woman, recognizing genuine remorse beneath her fear. "What's your name?" "Zoe Parker, ma'am." "Well, Zoe, I accept your apology. We all make mistakes." Robert remained silent, watching the interaction with an unreadable expression. After they left, Eleanor turned to him. "What exactly do you plan to do with this hotel if you buy it?" Robert's smile was both gentle and determined. "Transform it, of course. With your help." 3 days later, Robert and Eleanor sat in their home office in Connecticut, surrounded by documents detailing the Pinnacle Hotel Group's operations. The acquisition was moving forward at remarkable speed, with most shareholders eagerly accepting Robert's generous offer. "These service protocols are ridiculous," Eleanor said, reviewing the staff training materials. "Listen to this. Staff should prioritize attention to guests displaying visible indicators of wealth or status." They actually codified discrimination into their business model. Robert nodded grimly. Not surprising. The luxury industry often confuses exclusivity with exclusion. Eleanor set down the document, thinking of Zoe Parker and the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depended on the hotel chain. "What are you planning, Robert?" "Really?" He leaned back in his chair, considering her question. After 45 years, she still knew when he wasn't revealing his full intention. "I'm thinking of appointing you as chairwoman of hotel operations," he finally said. Eleanor laughed, then realized he was serious. "I know nothing about running hotels." "You know everything about treating people with dignity," he countered. "Besides, we're not buying this company because it's a good business decision. We're buying it to change something fundamental about how it operates." "If I were to do this," Eleanor said carefully, "I'd want to start with the people who were already there, not clean house." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Even the ones who treated you poorly, especially them." Eleanor pulled out her tablet and showed Robert what she'd been researching. Zoe Parker is 24, putting herself through graduate school in hospitality management. She's from a small town in Ohio, has $42,000 in student debt, and works double shifts to make rent. "You've been investigating the staff," Eleanor nodded. "The problem isn't the individual employees, Robert. It's the culture they're trained in. A culture that teaches them their job security depends on fawning over the wealthy while dismissing everyone else." Robert studied his wife with admiration. She'd always been the compassionate heart, balancing his strategic mind. "Well, what would you change first?" "Everything," Eleanor said with quiet conviction, "from how they measure success to how they train staff. The Pinnacle could maintain its luxury standards while pioneering a new approach to hospitality, one based on universal respect rather than selective deference." As they discussed possibilities late into the evening, Eleanor felt a familiar excitement building between them, the same energy that had fueled their earliest ventures when they had nothing but ideas and determination. They were in their 70s now, with billions in assets and a legacy nearly complete. Yet here they were, planning another revolution. "You know," Robert said, as they finally prepared for bed, "buying this hotel might be the best anniversary gift I've ever given you." Eleanor smiled. "It's certainly the most expensive." 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the Pinnacle's newly redesigned lobby. The space remained luxurious but transformed. Warmer lighting, comfortable seating arranged for conversation, and artwork from diverse emerging artists replacing the generic status pieces that had adorned the walls. Zoe Parker, now the hotel's assistant manager of guest experience, approached with a tablet. "Mrs. Williams, the new training program results are in. Guest satisfaction scores are up 22% across all metrics. And employee satisfaction?" Eleanor asked. "Up 31%, Zoe reported proudly. "The new compensation structure has reduced turnover by almost half." Eleanor nodded with satisfaction. The changes hadn't been easy. Some employees had resisted the cultural shift, clinging to old habits of judging guests by their appearances. But most had embraced the new philosophy, especially after experiencing how it transformed their own workplace dignity. The revolving door spun, and Robert entered, returning from a meeting with the hotel group's international partners. At 76, he showed no signs of slowing down, particularly when it came to this project that had become their shared passion. "How did it go?" Eleanor asked as he joined them. "Paris and Tokyo are on board with the changes," he confirmed. "Dubai is resistant, but they'll come around when they see the numbers." The numbers had been surprising. While some predicted that eliminating exclusivity would damage the brand, the opposite occurred. The Pinnacle had become known for something rarer: authentic warmth combined with impeccable service. Wealthy clients still received exceptional experiences, but so did every guest who walked through the doors, regardless of appearance. As they crossed the lobby, they passed a maintenance worker fixing a light fixture. Robert stopped to ask about the man's family, remembering details from a previous conversation. The worker engaged with his billionaire employer without fear or artificial deference, the exact cultural shift Eleanor had envisioned. Later, over dinner in the hotel's restaurant, featuring both $300 tasting experiences and $30 comfort food classic, Eleanor reflected on their journey. "You know what's ironic?" she said. "If they hadn't turned me away that day, none of this would have happened." Robert reached across the table for her hand. "In 45 years, I've learned that the best opportunities often come disguised as problems." Eleanor smiled, thinking of the young receptionist who had become one of their promising managers, of the housekeepers whose children now had college scholarships, of the countless small dignities extended to every person who entered the Pinnacle's doors. "We've built companies, raised children, changed industries," Robert continued, "but this, creating a space where people are valued for who they are, rather than what they appear to be, might be our best legacy yet." Through the restaurant's windows, Manhattan glittered as evening descended, a city of stark contrasts that had just become slightly more humane, thanks to one elderly woman being denied entry to a luxury hotel, and the husband who had loved her enough to buy the building and change its soul.